Hi everyone, this is Vince Gelman. Thank you for watching this video, visiting my channel. And a few videos ago, I spoke about a metaphor for the spiritual journey. And at the beginning of the metaphor, I had you imagine that we are living in a tavern. And I use the tavern as symbolic of being a location where we blend with the multitude. We lose consciousness. We aren't exactly coming from soul, speaking from soul, listening to the souls of others. We're lost in drink, lost in distraction, playing pool, watching sports, not really being true to ourselves. And I wanted to just speak to this metaphoric stage a little bit more using the tavern. And I just think the tavern is such a perfect place because it really is that location where we kind of hide out. We hide out. We're not really being true to ourselves. We want to escape from life. And what I want to go into a little bit more in depth in this video is the extent that this is true in our society. You know, we're born and raised in the tavern. We are born and raised in the tavern, and we are raised by people who generally do not know anything different than the tavern. That's all they know is the tavern. We are educated on how to best succeed and fit into the tavern. A tavern that is basically a place where we aren't exactly living on purpose. We go to jobs that we don't necessarily like, where there is tremendous greed and dysfunction. I mean, the tavern for me is basically the overall level of unconsciousness in our world. It's the overall structures and systems in which we live. It is the collective programmed matrix in which we live. And we are raised and educated to fit into the tavern and to succeed within this tavern because those who are raising us and those who are educating us don't know any different because they are in the tavern and they've never left. They've never left. Leaving the tavern is for those who hear a voice in them that says, this isn't enough. Something's off. There has to be more to life than this. Those rare souls who not only hear but have the courage to act on that intuition and leave altogether, which can make those in the tavern feel uncomfortable. Well, why are you suddenly leaving? Where are you going? You know, you're walking away from us. You're walking away from our tradition. You're walking away from our culture. You're walking away from the family. You're walking away from all that's ever been. You're walking away from what's always been done. How many times do we hear family systems or organizational systems say, but that's the way we've always done it. So that's the way we've always done it is the voice of the tribal mentality of the tavern that wants to maintain the status quo. And so there are the rare few, although the numbers are increasing, that says something isn't right, I need more than this, and they walk away. And they begin their spiritual quest, which I have spoken to in the video called A Metaphor for the Spiritual Journey, which is a couple of videos ago. But what I want you to know is that those who are raising us and those who are educating us to fit in and succeed in the tavern don't know that there is anything outside the tavern. They don't know they're in it. And I say that with, no, it's not a judgment. This is just an observation. This is simply the fact that this is simply evident by how much dysfunction there is in the world. You're going to have dysfunction. You're going to have the violence and the greed and the sickness that we have in this culture because people are staying in the tavern, because they don't know any different. You're going to have, a bunch of kids and teenagers who are acting out because they haven't been initiated or brought out of the tavern. They haven't been shown a different world. They're being taught, they're being molded to fit in. The reason why children act out, the reason why children struggle, and there are other reasons, but one of the big reasons is because they're being molded to fit into something that is not big enough to house the fullness and creative power of their spirit. They're being molded to fit into something that just isn't big enough. Their soul is much bigger than the tavern. Their soul's potential cannot be fulfilled while in the tavern. They have to leave the tavern. But the school system has traditionally molded and molded and molded and molded, and parents have molded and molded and molded. They want their children, parents want their children to get a nice job, to be secure, to be like others, to be normal, to fit in. And the school system was designed to mold children into a conveyor belt system that has them fit in and, quote unquote, again, I have to put the quotes there, succeed in society, which is really not much success at all. Because it really is no, J. Krishnamurti said it's no accomplishment to fit in or succeed in a highly dysfunctional society. So children are going to act out. We're going to get sick. It's bound to happen. We're going to get illness if we suppress that much. If we suppress our soul, if we suppress our instincts. And there's going to be a lot of anger, a lot of sadness, a lot of rage that we're going to suppress or act out because we're being forced to fit into a mold, because we're being denied who we really are. Eventually we succumb. Eventually we just say, well, this just must be it. This must be as good as life gets. So then what do? Well, because we don't see going outside of the tavern as an option, which really is about following the instincts of your soul, following the impulses of your soul. When we don't see that as an option, when we don't feel it, or we feel it but don't have the courage to act upon it and begin the journey of healing, begin the journey of empowerment, begin the journey of awakening, which means walking away from the known of the tavern. When we don't do that, what we do is we settle for a different kind of dream. And I'm careful with the word settle here. But what we do is we go after the dream that our media, that our entertainment industry has glorified, that we put such a high value on in our society, and that is the dream of meeting our one, meeting our knight in shining armor, meeting that person who's going to save us, and the dream of having a family. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that. For some people, there is a definite one. That's the person we're meant to be with. I believe that. And of course, there's nothing wrong with wanting to have a family. Those are natural, biological, and soul longings. The problem, though, is that we want that while we're still in the tavern. And what happens, because we haven't left the tavern, we are trying to get from the other, our beloved, what we haven't found in ourselves by leaving the tavern. We are trying to get it. We're trying to get that person to meet our needs, when the only way to really get them met is by leaving the tavern and going on a soul journey and knowing who you are. So what we're doing is we're setting ourselves up for codependency. We're setting ourselves up for being in a relationship that's going to be full of challenges because we don't really know who we are. We've gone after the dream that we've been taught to have without first knowing who we really are, without first having gone on the quest. And this doesn't mean that people who do leave the tavern and do go on the quest and do meet each other and do have a family, that doesn't mean that they're not going to have their challenges as well. I'm just saying that when you go on that journey, when you go on that pilgrimage to discover who you are, and you give it ample time, years, and you meet someone and you have difficulty, or you have children and you have difficulty, at least you have tools and awareness that you wouldn't have had if you'd stayed in the tavern. And you likely have a greater capacity to self-regulate and self-soothe because of the healing journey you've been on. But if you are in the tavern and that's all you know, and you are raising a family and having a relationship while in the tavern, that is basically a template for dysfunction. And that's one of the big reasons why we have so much dysfunction in the world, is because we've put that dream ahead of the dream of the soul, which is to leave and to know itself and to express itself in a soulful way. And I want to also say that, for some people, that's just their life path. That's what they came here to experience. That's their contract, is to meet someone and to work out their karma with that person in the tavern. So I'm not saying this to judge. I'm simply making observations. I'm simply pointing out what I see as patterns in society, because we don't know any different. We don't know who we are outside of the tavern, and we don't have people around us like mentors and elders who encourage us to be different, who encourage us to seek a soulful path, who encourage us to heal, to grow, to be different, to stand out, not fit in. And so we are a society that really doesn't know itself, and so we put the dream of marriage and the white picket fence and having kids ahead of knowing ourselves, of being true to ourselves, which has consequences. Ultimately, what we're walking away from when we leave the tavern is we're actually walking away, like I said, from the programmed matrix, from the programming that we've been taught through the church, through education system, through the media, through our parents. We're walking away from that. But what we're ultimately walking away from is who we think we are. We're walking away from the ego, because the ego is the limited self. It's the worldly self or temporal self. It's the self that believes itself is separate from others in life. That is ultimately what we're walking away from. We're leaving that which we think we are, the false self, to discover who we really are. And the tavern is symbolic of that. The tavern is our world, and we're walking away from that world, and therefore we're walking away from the self that identifies with that world, which is the ego. So if we often hear of the matrix or the program matrix, but ultimately the program matrix is the egoic structure. That's ultimately what it is. We shatter that glass ceiling. We shatter that glass ceiling of the matrix, of the program, by walking away from it and ultimately walking away from who we are into greater and greater versions of who we really are. We're walking away from who we are not to remember who we really are at the soul level. And that's our freedom. And that's our freedom. And that's, where I take you to in that other video, a metaphor for the spiritual journey. That's really where we really find our fulfillment, find our purpose. And we find a different quality of relationship that comes from soul to soul, heart to heart, because we have unpeeled those barriers, those blocks, those fears that really shroud who we really are at the soul and heart level. So we are not going to create the change we long for in the world so long as we stay within the tavern. We have to have the courage to leave it. That is the courage of the spiritual journey. So I'm almost out of time. I have to keep it to 15 minutes. Thank you so much for listening and watching. And if you enjoy this video, please subscribe. And thank you. I'll see you later. Bye.